Oh, brilliant. I think we're probably going to still get some more people join, but what we'll do is crack on with some housekeeping first of all, and then I'll pass over to the presenters to get going. Yeah, welcome to the Fraud Awareness Week webinar. I've discussed what we go through is Slido, which is what we use for our Q&A session. So you can access Slido from a mobile device by scanning the QR code to the right, or visit www.slido.com and enter the event code hashtag fraud webinar. You'll then be able to get access to the Slido via your mobile browser also. There's also the QR code for you to scan. So if you can do that now, you can add questions in then. If you have any questions during the webinar, then submit them via the question panel on the Slido tab, which is also accessible via Teams as well. We'll do our very best to get through all the Q&A in this session. But yeah, obviously how that works is you can go to the Slido button in this Teams webinar. You can do the reactions. You can also like the stuff that's been discussed, and you can also raise your hand if you're feeling brave enough to discuss stuff live on the webinar. So what I'll do now is I'll pass you over to Liz, and we'll get going. Thank you very much.
Thanks. So morning everyone, and welcome to our final webinar of 2024. Can't believe I'm saying that already. So great this year to be working alongside a lot of brokers and looking at ways that we can plug the gap and improve processes and just share knowledge. I think the one thing that keeps me up at night is probably the bike stuff and how we've tackled that, and how the things of the fraudsters are adapting and changing as we try and close the gaps, and seeing how they're coming up with new ways to get, kind of circumvent our systems and your systems to get those policies on cover. So it's been a really interesting year for that, and I look forward to working with a few of you over the next year and into 2025. So today, Matt, we've got Mark Pope and Matt Smith, who are going to be talking through some of their insights from the claims arena, both from motor and home respectively. So what I'll do is I'll pass over to Mark Pope to talk you through some motor.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Mark. I'm from the Claims Crime Prevention team. I'm a technical controller, so I'm responsible for knowing things all about fraud. So I've been asked to talk about a little bit around technology and what we're using within the claims fraud arena. Today, if we go to the next slide, I just want to discuss around collision damage retrieval and the toolkits that we've invested with our in-house engineers, allowing them to go out and take a lot of data from the vehicles that have been involved in collisions, especially now in an age where all these newer vehicles are rolling off production line. The amount of data that's contained within the control units. So our engineers can use these. We've invested in 3 of these kits. They connect to the onboard computer and can produce a report giving us information around vehicle speeds just prior to the collisions, telling us about steering, braking, seatbelt usage, the presence of passengers, severity of the crashes, whether there's any existing faults in the vehicle, and all that information can be used within a fraud investigation. The key thing for us is that the data is invaluable. It's fact. It's evidential. It can't be tampered with. So when we're looking at a fraud case, it's very, very crucial, this data in certain circumstances. So we go to the next slide. Show you a recent case that we've dealt with within our claims crime prevention team, and got a nice Audi there. It's been hit in the rear, and that's our customer's vehicle. And I think the picture of the vehicle on the right, can't tell what model vehicle that is, but that has gone into the rear of our customer's vehicle while stationary at a junction with an alleged collision time of 1600 hours on the 12th of November 2023. So we're just dealing with our customer's claim at that point, but we did get a tip off from the third-party insurers to advise us that their customer had actually taken their policy out on the same day of the collision, and had also been notified that their policyholder was actually the partner for our policyholder. So on the basis of that, it was referred into our fraud team to have a closer look at. So if we go to the next slide. Part of our investigation, we've got a statement from our customer just to narrow down the facts. So his statement that he provided to a claims investigator, he confirmed that the accident happened about 6 o'clock in the evening. He said he was about 3 or 4 car lengths from the junction and a cat ran out from his left-hand side and he instinctively braked. So immediately we got a bit of inconsistency there from when he reported the accident to us and said he was stationary at a junction to now saying that there was a cat coming out in front of the road, which was his reason for braking. He said he wasn't an emergency brake, he didn't hit the cat, but the car stopped safely and there was no skidding from the car and he didn't feel the ABS working. Next slide, please. Further to this, he gave a description of the impact. It was 5, 6 out of 10. He did say that his vehicle was pushed forward across the junction, but one of the more key notes was that he said that he did feel the seatbelt tightening. Next slide, please. So upon inspection of the vehicle, we plugged in the collision damage retriever tool, and this was quite key because it did highlight a couple of inconsistencies, one of them being that the supplementary restraint system did not deploy, which suggests to us that there was no seatbelt tightening despite the statement that was given, which could be a suggestion that there was no one in the vehicle. So that highlighted our concerns. Next slide, please. On the back of that, we decided that it would probably be prudent to get the third-party vehicle inspected. And this is where a few other things came to light. So it was inspected. The collision damage retrieval pulled certain data through, confirming that basically the crash had occurred on the third-party vehicle on the 11th of November 2023 at 18:21. So this is the day prior to the alleged collision. So on the back of that, it's clear evidence to prove that the collision didn't occur as alleged. The third-party vehicle had suffered the damage before. What had transpired is that on the 11th of November, the third party wasn't actually insured. So we believe that she conspired with her partner to contrive an incident. But what this did, by plugging in the collision damage retrieval tool, which saved us a lot of money, we didn't have to get a forensic engineer out to go and inspect both those vehicles, which can be quite expensive to do a damage consistency report. The data was there. The incident didn't happen on the day as alleged, and both parties' version of events were incorrect. So that resulted in repudiations. Both parties were loaded to the insurance fraud register, which is going to make things very difficult for them to get future insurance products. And that's the end of my presentation. So I would say if you've got any questions regarding motor insurance fraud, please pop them into Slido. It doesn't need to be around collision damage retrieval. If you've got anything that you think that I could answer, then please by all means do that. And I'll pass you over to Matt, who will talk about property fraud.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. As it says there, property fraud, I'm very much the person that looks after the teams that investigate first-party fraud from our own customers, mostly in the case of home, but also some other product lines such as travel and pet. But I'm here to talk to you today about some home scenarios. So if I could have the next slide, please. Thank you. So I thought I'd kick off with some new technology. This may be new to some of you may have heard of it. These guys have been around in the market for a couple of years now, and have been gaining a lot of traction. ClearSpeed are an American company that are providing some pretty cutting edge technology in the space of voice analytics. This is a new way of looking at voice analytics, not the old sort of stress analysis type approach, but actually using modern sort of AI in order to assess risk. So we were at Allianz, we've been one of the early adopters in the market for this technology. We undertook a number of trials during 2023 to test the technology in our home insurance space with our own customers, and then have subsequently adopted it through 2024. We've been up and running now with this across all of our new home claims coming into the business since August this year. And I just thought I'd talk to you a little bit about it. I no doubt there will be questions about this, and I'll be more than happy to respond to those at the end of the session. So ClearSpeed, how does it work? Essentially, it's a AI solution looking for risk-associated vocal characteristics. When the model is running, the customer is asked a number of questions and they give simple yes or no responses to those questions. That data is then analysed, converted into ClearSpeed's own IP, and then those results are shared back with insurers. What this is allowing us to do is to assess risk much quicker and much earlier in the claim process. And we can make decisions en masse, effectively in bulk, at a very early stage. It allows us to pull out the cases that we are interested in from a fraud perspective, but more importantly, allows those customers that are not flagging to us to be processed straight through. And so that's enabling us to settle those claims a lot quicker, a lot simpler. It's less time for us, less time for the customer, less complication. So a nice, quick and easy process. For us, voice is going to be key over the next couple of years as part of our fraud controls, but also allowing us, as I say, to make sort of quicker decisions. And so we're expecting to see significant improvements in both our NPS and also, general customer satisfaction, our speed of processing. Next slide, please. So I thought I'd talk to you here about an example of a case that ClearSpeed's technology identified for us. In fact, a number of our fraud controls in the home space triggered for this. We have machine learning models, and of course, we still have the claim handler involved in the case. So, and the claim handler is key to identifying some of those behavioural concerns during the telephone conversation or during the sort of life cycle of the claim. The concerns highlighted in this were that the customer was insistent upon using their own contractor. Now, this is not uncommon for customers to ask to use their own trade. They're used to them, they may have had them before, they trust them. But it is unusual to refuse to have anybody to come out and inspect damage. And also their customers' aggressive behaviour towards the claims handler with no real sort of basis for that behaviour, given this was the first notification of loss call. Those things stood out for us, and so we took a look at it. Can I have the next slide, please? Our investigation, when the case had been passed to the fraud team, revealed that what had actually happened here was there was excessive damage had been caused during the trace and access process. The indications are that there was a genuine leak, but what we also established was there was a significant amount of pre-existing wear and tear, and also exaggeration was plain to see. What we actually established was that the customer had sought to actually replace the entire unit. They didn't want to have a shower in this space. They wanted to install a bath. When there was a leak, they took advantage of that situation in order to try and maximize the amount of damage caused, and also then to maximize the settlement. When we approached the customer and challenged the customer around these concerns, our customer stopped responding to us. And we find that's quite common when it comes to a fraud investigation in the home space. Quite often it's very different to motor, and the examples that Mark gave in terms of having data to be actually able to rely upon and say hard and fast, you weren't at that location at that date at that time. It is much more about having a conversation with the customer and teasing out those details that then lead us to pull together a theory, a view as to what has actually happened, and then to challenge the customer around those and to ask for an explanation and ask for evidence in support of a genuine loss. And it's quite often at that point in a fraud investigation that the customer will stop engaging with us and will seek to withdraw the claim either proactively by telling us they don't want to pursue the claim anymore, or in this case, just simply stop responding altogether. In this instance, we declined this claim, and you can see the value there. It's not a huge amount of money, but it does obviously stack up across a lot of claims. If I could have the next slide, please. We have another case study here, and this is a scenario that we tend to see quite a lot, and also is something where we believe that with the right questioning application, we can possibly start to sort of tease these scenarios out. This is a case of a customer contacting us with a simple claim saying that there's a problem with the sewer and they've got drains leaking. However, it has caused a problem within the property because there's some effluent coming into the home, and that she'd had to ask the tenants to leave. The claim to us is for the drainage repair, the cleanup, decontamination, etc., and any repairs necessary within the home. But also, principally, a significant part of the claim was for loss of rent. We actually had our contractors out and we were dealing with this. We'd considered it and accepted it as a genuine claim. And then it was our contractor that highlighted an issue to us in that there appeared to be 5 or 6 males living at the property, that it was largely unfurnished, apart from mattresses strewn around on the floor. They actually referred the case back to us in the fraud team, and with some additional investigation regarding who's been living at the property, credit checking, looking for open source information effectively to try and identify who's there, who isn't there, who these individuals might be. We actually established that the property was being rented out as a home of multiple occupancy. Now, that is not within our acceptance criteria. We're not, at this point in time, taking on those risks. So obviously our questions to the customer were around this, this use of the property, why it hadn't been disclosed to us. Interestingly, our customer doubled down on the fraud in this instance by providing us with false documentation. This is another sort of approach to making fraudulent insurance claims, that people will try and falsify documentation. And like other insurers, we have the ability to pull out those documents, see what the risk is within them, if necessary, undertake forensic analysis of those documents in order to be able to compile the evidence to be able to prove or disprove their genuinity. In this instance, these documents were false, and the claim was declined and the policy was voided, which really, with hindsight, if the customer had just been forthcoming and said, I'm renting the property out to multiple people, we would have simply said it's not within our risk appetite, but I'm sure there are other insurers out there that would happily help. Can I have the next slide, please? This is the last case study, and just an example of how an investigation can take quite a period of time, but that we don't stop looking for the fraud just because the claim has been dealt with. So we have a customer who submits this first claim for the loss of a pendant in July 2023, and the claim was accepted and paid at just over £9,000. When the second claim came in for loss of 3 rings whilst the customer was in Spain, unfortunately that claim was not covered because there was no cover in force. The customer hadn't taken the personal possessions cover needed in order to make that claim. But you can see that very quickly the customer added personal possessions cover as a midterm adjustment. Now it's interesting because you could argue that the behaviour of not being covered, it would be quite natural for a customer to then come and say, well, I didn't realise I wasn't covered when I was abroad. I better add that cover for future risk. However, the risk there obviously is that the customer may then seek to claim for the items that they weren't covered for. They feel that sense of injustice. In this instance, a third claim soon materialised. Our machine learning model identified the fraud risk in that there'd been cover added and a claim presented soon after. We put the customer to proof around this particular loss, and there were no details forthcoming from the customer. As a consequence, that claim was declined. We suspected fraud in that instance. We couldn't prove it, but we suspected it was there. However, the case didn't stop there, because as part of the process of gathering information from the customer and of completing open source intelligence searches, we identified a photograph of our customer wearing the lost diamond cross pendant, dated December 2023, which is 5 or 6 months after she claimed to have lost it in July. Our inquiries continued with the customer along those lines, seeking an explanation for why we have a date stamped and quite obviously a Christmas time photograph, given the Christmas tree in the background. The customer failed to engage with us and failed to provide responses again, seeking to walk away from us. However, in this instance, we were not prepared to accept the customer just walking away. We cancelled the customer's policy, invoking the fraud condition, and solicitors were instructed to recover the paid sum. We will actively use our solicitors and our recovery teams in order to pursue fraudulent claim payments from customers. So it's not a case of they've had their money, they've walked away. We will seek to recover it from them. And I think that was me, but I'm available for any questions as and when they arrive.
Cool. I have got a few questions. Thanks, guys. That was really insightful into just the claims journey, because I think we focus quite a lot on policy on these calls, and how we can combat it, but actually what's happening after those sales and what's happening from a claims perspective. So, Mark, I've got a few questions for you as well. So if you want to come back on and if you want to keep putting through the questions on Slido, that'd be great. So, Mark, just to go back to your case study, how did you find out that the two parties had known each other?
So that particular case study, the tip-off was from the third-party insurers. So part of their validation process, speaking to their customer, she's obviously mentioned to them that she's collided with her partner, which they thought was suspicious. So they kindly gave us a call and tipped us off in that respect.
Do you find that that's something that insurers do a lot of, and that you've got that collaboration on these sort of claims?
We try to. So we do struggle within the industry getting through to other insurers, but we do have a network of individuals working at insurers through fraud contacts that we can speak to and tip them off. So we as a company do proactively speak to other insurers and let them know if we've got concerns with their customers' claims, and then hope that would be reciprocated.
Okay, cool, thank you. There was a question, how much was saved for the repudiation of motor claims as a result of the retrieval kit? Do we know overall, and how much, and also do we know how much the kits cost?
So there's several £100s. I can't put an exact figure on that, I'm afraid. Our engineers are the ones who have procured them, and I'm not sure on ultimate figures. It's not something we record. We record around more types of fraud, so we can give you figures around the amount of staged collisions that we we've had, and the savings there were against induced or exaggerated damage rather than the tools that we've used, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. And is there a sort of age limit for the types of cars that we can use this kit on?
Yes, yeah, the older vehicles, certainly not anything over 10 years old, is going to be quite difficult to get the data that we got out of that case study. But any vehicle which, you know, has got engine management lights, there is data stored in there. So whether that's getting an error list, which you can put off to identify if there's any ongoing issues with a vehicle, which could be a motivating factor for committing insurance fraud. But anything coming off the production line right now, you're going to be able to get a lot of data. We've even had a case recently where one of our customers went into the back of someone on a motorway. We plugged into his vehicle, and although we didn't have any concerns with the claim being fraudulent, it did identify that he was traveling at 120 miles per hour right before the accident. So with that data, we were able to pass that to our underwriters and say, do you want to continue this risk? And this is his driving behavior, and they issued a 7-day cancellation, and they flagged him not someone that we want to take the risk in the future. So there's other uses for these toolkits as well. You can use it for liability, to establish liability, especially multi-vehicle shunts over who's hit who first. The data will tell you that, how many impacts it's had, and the speed of those impacts, etc.
Cool. So yeah, that's interesting that the kits we might have got them for the purpose of fraud, but actually they're kind of that it's kind of fanning out a little bit more into other areas of claims, and so that, you know, that saving is probably you know, they're recouping it in more than one way. Certainly. Which is good to see. Cool. Okay. In your opinion, Mark, when dealing with motor claims, what's a vital question that helps identifying possible fraud indicators?
Possible fraud indicators.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say there's a specific question. It's more around profiling the individuals, profiling vehicles, etc. One of the biggest impacts at the moment on the increase in fraud is certainly the cost of living. And if you think that the cost of repairs of a vehicle have gone up, I think that is probably the biggest factor at the moment that we are seeing within our bent metal fraud arena. So any vehicle repairs, we'll look at the MOT history. Has the vehicle been recently MOT'd? It's got a lot of advisories looking for corrosion, those types of things that suggest that the vehicle is on its last legs, oil leaks, etc. We'll also look at individuals if they've got any financial difficulties, CCJs, insolvencies, the company directors, are their businesses going under. So we go out to our claims teams with a whole host of indicators, and ask them to, if it's hitting 2-3 of those sort of indicators, to refer those claims into us.
Thank you. Okay, and there was a question about what has been the best tech for motor fraud that you have found has worked the most in 2024. So what's the best tech?
Best tech. So I'm still a fan of old school investigations. I don't think you can beat a handler behind a laptop, investigating a case. But there's lots of different technologies that we use, not just collision damage retrieval, dash cam footage, CCTV footage is probably the big one that we use to prove fraud, and get more involvement with the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Department, IFED, City of London Police, and we've had some really good success with the moped fraud, which is quite active in London and Bristol at the moment, and a particular case where we've been able to obtain the CCTV footage from 2 different angles, which showed a moped delivery driver just parking up behind a van as one of our customers reversed off the drive, and then as our customers then pulled away, that moped delivery drivers then deliberately brought their vehicle into collision with our customer. So that's in the hands of the police at the moment. So yeah, probably CCTV footage is probably the best technology that we can use, because it can't hide, it's there to be seen.
Okay, thank you. And another question that's come in probably off the back of what you've just said about bike claims. Can the damage retrieval kits be used, or the retrieval kits be used on bikes, or are they just specifically for cars?
No, I think that's just specifically for cars. I don't think especially the smaller mopeds, the 125cc's, they don't have the computer ports that we can access.
And that's another question. Are we still seeing the 125 bikes? Yes, they are prevalent across across both motor from a claims perspective, and obviously from a policy perspective. That's a big issue. And like I mentioned in my opening opening bit about the fact that fraudsters are trying to circumvent the system. They're now insuring them as bigger bikes to try and get round our systems. So, but what we're finding is they're the same make and models, but the engine size is being logged as something different. So we're seeing 300cc bikes and things like that. So they've realised that we've kind of been putting blocks in for the 125s and making it a bit more difficult and trying to close that gap. And now they're trying to circumvent that. So yeah, that's definitely something that we're seeing, and definitely 125s are still hot topic and things that we're focusing on. Okay. Do you think, Mark, that other insurers will adapt and get this kind of kit, or the retrieval and that technology in-house?
Yes, certainly other insurers, especially the big players, do have access to this, and a lot of the external engineers that insurers use also have these kits that can be used on request. Okay.
Cool. Thank you. So, Matt, there are a couple of questions for you. You'll be glad to hear. So one of them, is ClearSpeed allowed as evidence in court if needed?
Yes, it is. I would say the back office, the technical guys, the data wizards that are able to actually put this information together, and the coding and everything and required around it, they are all how do we say, trained appropriately in order to be able to attend court and present as witness evidence. They have already in the United States. I'm not aware of any cases so far in the UK.
Okay. Do you think that's something we would push, or do you not think we'd need to go that far?
I think, for us, ClearSpeed is a fraud indicating tool. It is not a decision-making solution. So it's not a case of, you flagged red on ClearSpeed and therefore we don't pay your claim. It is always still going to come to a human being for us to look at and to analyse, and to question the customer about ultimately. We still have to establish whether or not the lie that the customer has told to us during the claims process is material, which is, that's the really key thing. If we get to a point where we're being challenged at court by the customer on a fraud decision, then yes, ClearSpeed could be called into question as to why was the case flagged to us in the first instance, but it's not going to be the evidence that the case rests upon.
Okay, thank you. And how are you adapting to using voice technology?
The business, like I say, we are three and a bit months into using this technology. It's not just going to be home insurance customers. Our motor insurance customers are also going to be having the ClearSpeed technology applied to their claims as we go into 2025, and there'll be more news on that, I'm sure, prior to the launch of that solution. But what's interesting for us is, as you could expect, all insurers will have almost a matrix about their decision-making process in terms of what claims are suitable for quicker settlement, what claims are suitable for use of a supplier or loss adjuster to actually go out and physically assess. And I think what this is helping us to do is understand and evaluate that risk a lot earlier in the process, which means ultimately that we can adjust our thresholds around where we want to, for example, settle on first notification, where we want to use a payment direct to the customer as a settlement solution rather than supply chain inspect and report or reinstate, that sort of thing. So I think that's going to be the biggest impact area out. And then, of course, it is interesting for us in a home insurance space from a fraud perspective. Very much home has lags behind motor in terms of use of technology to aid the fraud investigation. So it's a new space for us in the first party fraud space, and it'll be interesting to see how motor I'm sure will learn from some of the trial and error that we are going through in the home space at the moment. So.
Excellent. I think the next question, there's quite a few questions about this, so it's probably an answer maybe from all of us. You mentioned adding the fraudulent couple to the fraud register, and I think we've mentioned it a couple of times throughout it. We add stuff to the fraud register. Is this something that will stop them from purchasing any insurance product? Also, does this kick in pre-inception or post-inception so that they can get cover and but will be cancelled? I think from a policy perspective, we have got mechanisms that if we are identifying fraud, that we've got ways of declining those policies from coming through, but potentially if we're unable to prove fraud, then we may have we may see those people again, I suppose, and we need to understand why they've come back to us and what does that look like, and do we need to investigate the policy or the claim that they have presented to us, and once that's done, we might be happy that the policy or the claim can continue, but anything that's recognised as fraud, from an internal perspective, we are able to decline that business, so we don't want to insure those individuals again. Potentially some of some others in the industry, depending on what systems they use, may see that from a national level and may take the same approach. But we wouldn't want to insure someone that we know that has committed fraud especially in the last sort of 6 years. So another question is, do any fraud instances get raised to authorities, or does it stop with us? So Matt, have you had any instances?
Yes. Yes, we do work with the authorities. Mark mentioned IFED a moment ago. That is the Insurance Fraud Enforcement Division of the City of London Police. They were a department particularly set up in order to tackle insurance fraud and to support the insurance industry. It is in part funded, I believe, by insurers via the API. So we contribute towards the maintenance of that department. We work with them on a regular basis across all of our product lines. We have a fraud coordinator role within the business, who acts as our principal liaison with the police. We prepare files, evidence files, as the police do effectively, in order to put a bundle together for the CPS in order to go through a prosecution. So we work with them on a regular basis across all those lines. They will go out, they will arrest customers, third parties, anybody involved in fraud. They will interview them under caution. They will issue police cautions. They will issue stop, cease and desist letters. But they will also take cases to court and prosecute with our support. So and it's a very important aspect. We do have cases that we talk about regularly, where people are receiving prison sentences effectively. Even today, when the prisons are full, there are still some insurance cases that are going to the prison. So
And I think those ones are very much, how is it the consumer detriment, and what does that look like from a policy perspective? And I think if there's, there's any professional enablers, and I think probably the level and the complexity of the claims that they have presented, and what does that look like? Are they prolific claimers? And they've gone across a number of different insurers, and so basically we would put those cases into IFED, and they would investigate and potentially find those extra, and obviously the IFB might have a hand in that as well. So it's using all that intelligence that we can get and putting those cases together. But we are quite successful. Sounds like we're blowing our own trumpet a little bit here, but we are quite successful with the stuff we send over, just because of the way that our coordinator liaises, and what does that look like? Cool. So there's a couple more questions. Mark, what permissions do we need before pulling the data from the car? Is it just a case of we can just do that, or do we need to ask permission from the policyholder, and what's that look like?
No, it's just part of our inspection process. So if we're going out to inspect our customer's vehicle, or even a third-party vehicle, then we just instruct the engineer, and he'll pull the data for us.
Okay, and what about vans and lorries and bigger commercial vehicles? Does that kit work on that, or is it a specific?
I'm not aware of any cases where we have done that. I wouldn't be surprised that you would be able to, especially with the newer vehicles, especially newer vans, anything electric. Got all these electric delivery vans going around. They will definitely contain data. Teslas are great because they've got the inbuilt dash cam, which you can pull off as well.
And also there's some questions about this are you starting to see a stream of claims from e-bike delivery riders? Because obviously we know that that's changed up, especially within the cities and stuff. Have we seen any more? Have we seen a rise in that, do you know, or do you think that's the up and coming fraud?
Not seen anything yet with the e-bikes or scooters. Nothing's crossed my desk, and I'm not aware of anyone in our teams investigating anything like that, but certainly, probably something to keep an eye out going forward.
Yeah, those cash for crash potentially, those kind of stunt drivers that we're seeing that are chucking those bikes around. So that might be the new kind of 2025 fraud to look out from a claims perspective.
I mean, predominantly they're just used for muggings at the moment, aren't they? We're seeing that in the news and every day, aren't we?
Well, hopefully, yeah. Okay, so there's some questions here about presumably any brokers that would have any fraudulent cases would be advised. Yes, we would. I think what we're doing is reaching out to the brokers where we know that potentially they've been targeted, or they've got a higher level of fraud, and we can see that from some of the MI, and myself and Aaron, my technical controller, we look at that monthly to see where the kind of peaks and troughs are from different brokers. And we are in contact with quite a large amount of brokers for different varying reasons, and just to support them and to kind of share best practice. So it's a continual process, but I'm happy for you to reach out to me if you feel that you need some more support with anything, or you're not necessarily seeing any fraud on our book, but maybe just understanding what's going on from a specific kind of product line. So happy for you to reach out. I've got a few more questions. We've got a bit more time, so I'm just going to go for a couple more. Mark, do you feel how useful are dash cams? So quite a few people have got them. Are they useful?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. If you're targeted by a fraudster who's slammed on their brakes in front of you, without dash cam, it's your word against their word, and we have to build a case up around inconsistencies and profiling the third party. Well, the dash cam says it shows you exactly what has happened, and makes life much easier for insurers to decline those claims. And we have our claims teams, and they're under pressures to make decisions on claims. So if a customer says they've gone into the back of someone and they've got dash cam, we don't ask for it and don't identify that it's a fraudulent claim, then we could end up settling, because as far as we're concerned, gone into the back of someone, you must be at fault.
Thank you. And are we seeing, you mentioned Bristol and London for the bike stuff, have you seen any more trends in kind of ages and types of vehicles or areas that's different to usual, or is it the same sort of northwest staging accidents and far away from the risk address, that kind of stuff?
it's gradually spreading out. We're seeing pockets of claims all over the country. Just at the moment, the main areas are certainly London and Bristol. We've seen claims down here in Bournemouth. Yeah, so they're setting up the bike shops. They're the ghost broker in the policies. They've got their dodgy rental agreements for these bikes and lending them to who knows who. There's 3 or 4 different drivers using these bikes. They're all using different Deliveroo or Just Eat accounts. So it's when they're going back to, and we know it's Brazilians, Portuguese, their visas are up, they're going back to their countries and returning the vehicles, and at that point that's when they're causing these collisions to get them written off. So.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Gavin, you put a question out if there was any fraud concerns. Yeah, of course we can raise them out. If they aren't our policies, then I think we need to be careful, but we can definitely share case studies, I think. But if it is cases that sit with us, then obviously we would be able to share details and go from there. And it says, what's the impact of individuals who've had their identity stolen to front fraudulent policies? Will they be prevented from getting insurance in the future? We try not to. One of our things is that we actually register them as victims, so that on our fraud detection system, so that we can actually protect them a little bit more. We try and call those individuals and have contact with them and make them aware of what we're seeing, what does that look like, and obviously try and offer them as much support as we can, because obviously we know that that's quite a difficult time for someone, and and why is someone doing that, what can they do to protect themselves. So we try and ensure that we can offer support. But yeah, we wouldn't set someone that we knew was a victim to a fraudulent status. We would ensure that we set them to a victim status, and then anyone else picking up that would see that and be able to support and go from there. Do insurers encourage discounts? I think potentially that's a really good idea, and I think that that's to be ways to protect yourself. So I think that that has been floated around as an idea, but I think there's probably the cost of the dash cams and all that kind of stuff, but definitely something to consider. Matt, what kind of percentage of incidents get flagged as fraudulent with the voice technology?
At the moment in home, we're seeing about 5% of cases, first notification of loss, coming through to my team. We then triage those cases before we start a conversation with the customer. So we don't by any means accept all of those referrals that come from the technology. There are some customer behaviors that can provide a false indication, and so we're very careful just to weed those out. But at the moment, about 5% of customers are coming through to us for a closer look.
Oh, thank you. Right, I think that's all the questions. I think all of these that are left are variations of questions we've answered before. It was really great to be able to answer so many questions in the session, and I hope that you found that it was useful. Like I said, happy for you to reach out to us if you did have any more questions after today regarding the topics that Matt and Mark have spoken about, and also just from a general perspective, from a policy perspective. I'm happy for you to reach out to me. Sorry, apologies. So can I have the next slide? So just to wrap up, just thank you for joining us today, but our last part is a bit of an appeal. So as you may be aware, that Bernardo's is the charity that Allianz is supporting moving forward, and we're doing a toy appeal. So the QR code will take you to our wish list for toys that we will then send out to families in need through Bernardo's, and so it allows children to have some Christmas presents. So if you are looking for a charity support, then we would obviously love you to support this, and so just if you are interested, then follow the QR code. It'd be great for you to have your support. Thank you. So that's the last part. So thanks again for joining us. I think it was a really good session. It was really great to understand a bit more from that claims perspective and review some of those claim studies and see what's going on in the claims world. Hopefully you found it insightful, and also if there's any topics that you want us to cover in the future, we will continue. These are quite popular, these fraud webinars, and so we want to continue that into 2025. So if you've got any topics you want us to cover, then please reach out and let us know. I'm sure there'll be a feedback email that will come back to you. So yeah, any feedback for the session would be great. We will wrap this up now. I hope you have a really good Tuesday. Thank you very much.